Hey everyone, happy Thursday. Welcome to the Passwordless POV LastPass's LinkedIn Live show. I'm technology correspondent Lisa Martin, thrilled to be with you here today. I've got two great guests with me. Alex Cox joins us, Director of Information Security at LastPass, and Mike Kosak is back with us, Senior Principal Intelligence Analyst at LastPass. We're going to spend about 15 to 20 minutes with you talking about essentially three main topics. We're going to get an introduction into LastPass Labs. Alex is going to walk us through all that, what it means, the mission, why they were founded, how it's enabling companies to protect their customers' data, their company data, and their company in general. Then Mike's going to walk us through phishing trends, something that shocked me. Phishing's been around for 25 years. Mike's going to walk us through its evolution, adaptation, why people continue to fall for phishing scams. And then really importantly, we're going to be talking about holiday cybersecurity etiquette and hygiene and how to be safe when doing online transactions. We'd love for you to participate in the conversation. Drop us a comment or a question in the LinkedIn chat here, and we would bring you into the show. All right, Alex, let's go ahead and get started. LastPass Labs was introduced just in August, a couple months ago. Give us the backstory on that mission, vision, why it was launched in the first place.
Yeah, sure, Lisa, no problem. So what's pretty funny is I had a former boss at one point that said, "You can't have a security company without a research team." And I always kind of took that to heart. That that's a pretty important thing to do when you're doing security work. So when our CISO called me up, over a year ago and said, "Hey, you want to come start a threat intelligence program at LastPass for me?" I jumped at that opportunity because, the opportunity to build something from scratch and do like cool things is something that I've always been very passionate about in the security space and especially in threat intelligence. So we started what's called the TIME team. And if you aren't familiar with that acronym, it stands for Threat Intelligence Mitigation and Escalation. The team is really involved in a lot of things around threat intelligence. But one of the things that we've launched, as Lisa mentioned, is LastPass Labs. Labs is an umbrella term that kind of covers a couple of different things. Primarily, it is to describe our blog and our ability to communicate security incidents and events and things that we think are important via our security blog. But it's also things like interacting with the security community and making sure that we have contact points for other security researchers to work with us and other security teams to work with us. And then lastly, it's the idea that we can help our customers out specifically. So when they're being targeted by, say, phishing attacks or something that we can help with, we've got process and technology to address those and help take those threats down. So that's Labs at a high level.
It sounds highly collaborative with customers, with partners, with other threat intelligence experts, which is so critical because we've talked about this for the last couple of years, particularly with the macroeconomic environment and the cyber landscape, the threat landscape changing so dramatically that it's critically important for businesses and consumers across the globe. I'd love to know a little bit more specifically, Alex, how LastPass Labs is enabling organizations to protect their data, their customers' data, and their company at large. What are some of the unique things that the labs is delivering?
Oh, sure, sure. One of the other things I usually say about threat intelligence work that's pretty funny is, threat intel is tell me everything about something you just heard about as quickly as possible. So that idea of, having to communicate these threat events that I just learned about, in a way and to a place and to people that can kind of act on them and, act on that information and do good things for their company is kind of an important part of that. So a couple of things I think, are helping us do that. Automation as far as looking for threat intel events, making sure that, we have some processing in the background that doesn't require a bunch of hands-on analyst work. We'll present something to you that says, "Hey, this is bad. You should take a closer look." And then also, doing things like I mentioned with the phishing attacks, making sure that we're tracking those and we're actively taking them down to help our customers. And then, the third is like, just giving guidelines. There's a lot of mystery and mystique in running a security program, especially if you don't have a tremendous amount of resources for it. So having somebody or a team that's able to communicate those kind of simple things that you can do day to day is something that we're kind of focused on. So
Simplification is good, especially as there's so much complexity out there. And we're going to bring Mike in just a couple of minutes to talk about phishing. But I want to understand, Alex, the impact that LastPass Labs will have on really reducing the time from threat awareness to mitigation, since the threats are just consistent and pervasive.
yeah, I mean, so I'm going to keep going back to this phishing example. One, because Mike's going to talk about it, but two, it's a place that we've had some fairly significant success. So one of the things that I'll pass along, which I, very gladly passed along to my boss a couple of weeks ago, is that since we started the lab's work, we've had at LastPass like a high 90% drop in phishing attacks. And that's
Wow.
from the active work that we're doing, taking phishing sites down and making sure that we're acting on those things very quickly. So when you think about time to response and our victims, the victims of these phishing attacks, they typically get the email and they go, is this good or is this bad? Let me send it to an abuse mailbox. Let me get some info. Did I click on it? Did I not? Et cetera. If the team at LastPass can get ahead of that and basically take care of that problem before it either gets to the customer or the victim, or it's there's just a very small window of opportunity for the bad guys to act. That just makes our end users and our clients that much more secure, because they just don't have to worry about it. So taking that very active approach to helping solve these threat problems for both LastPass internally and our customers is a big part of what we're doing.
That's outstanding, and you mentioned the metric there. That's tremendous amount of impact in really a short amount of time. Let's go into our second topic now, since Alex has been teasing at phishing. Mike, something that I was surprised to learn during my research for this episode is that phishing has been around for over 25 years. Why do people continue to fall for phishing scams?
Sure. And, really it's because these phishing attacks are designed to take advantage of human instincts. And there's a lot of psychology behind them. They're designed, and we'll talk more about this in a little bit, but they're designed increasingly to be convincing, to look like actual emails, to really kind of trick people in. You'll also see a lot of psychological aspects around pressure and time. And, hey, I need a response on this quickly, to kind of drive people to make a decision before they have a chance to fully process it, and kind of put the pressure on them to act. There's no shame in falling for these, because they are designed to take advantage of kind of, in many ways, our best nature.
And two, are they getting more and more personal? Because that's some of the things that I've seen, is that it's just becoming, in terms of phishing's evolution to adaptation, that personalization front makes it even harder for even some experts to detect.
Absolutely, and we see a couple of different things driving that. So, really, what we've seen though in the last year in particular is the advent of sort of the democratization of AI and ChatGPT and similar tools, and we see threat actors using that to create much more convincing phishing emails. So, you go back 25 years ago or so, you think about kind of the standard joke around phishing with the Nigerian prince and the 419 emails like that.
Yeah.
They were often poorly worded. The grammar was bad. The spelling was bad. It was relatively easy to spot. And now what you see and it's really been an incredible increase just over the last year with the advent of ChatGPT and similar
Yeah.
tools. These threat actors using that to make much more convincing emails. The old poorly worded, poorly spelled emails are gone. They look good. They're cloning legitimate sites. So, the grammar's good. Logos are good. There's been a huge increase in that, to the point where it's making it much easier, as sort of the technological barriers of entry for these threat actors into phishing have dropped. We've seen, so SlashNext actually just put out a report in the last month or so, where they've in their study found a 1,265% increase in phishing from Q4 of last year to Q3 of this year.
Wow. So like when
A massive
ChatGPT launched, which just had its first birthday, that's crazy.
Exactly.
Wow.
So,
Wow.
really, really strong increase. The other thing is sort of a subset of that, a 967% increase from that same study in credential phishing as part of that increase.
Oh,
So, really still showing that desire by these threat actors to get to passwords, to get to that information, to get those credentials, so that they can leverage that legitimate access to networks or home computers, so that they can take that next step, be it data exfiltration, ransomware,
yeah.
whatever it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah. What's your recommendations, Mike, for social media safety from a strategic perspective? We know so often, even here on LinkedIn, when people are getting LinkedIn connection requests from people that they're already connected to, how do you recommend and advise folks, consumers, business folks, to be safe in social?
Sure. To the degree that you can, if and I know there's certainly sort of different requirements based on roles, but if you don't know the person, don't accept the invitation. That's kind of the most basic advice I would give. And then from there, investigate a little bit. If you're not sure or if you feel suspicious, trust your gut.
Yeah,
If they really need to connect, they'll send another invite. They might send a message, things that might make it a little bit easier to verify that you're actually dealing with, whoever they say they are. And if it's a duplicate request, I would immediately not trust that, and follow up with that person if you have that contact with them to either
yeah.
see if they've created a new account, let them know that they might be, somebody might be imitating them. There's some steps you can take for sure.
We talked about the acceleration and the massive percentage increases in phishing and credentials hacking since the launch of ChatGPT, which just as I mentioned, celebrated its first birthday about a week ago. Remote work is now so common since the last few years that the lines between remote work and working, personal work as well, those lines are blurring. What are some of the challenges that presents, and how do you advise organizations and people to be much more vigilant where remote work and phishing is concerned?
Sure. And, I think really that comes down to, as tempting as it is, differentiating your life on that computer as much as you can. So, bring your own device is getting increasingly risky.
Yeah.
Anytime you can differentiate that, personally, I don't think I've checked my personal email on a work computer or even a computer that I use to do work in 10 years. It's just the threat is there. The more you can sort of bifurcate that sort of approach, the better off you are, and the more barriers you have.
There's a definite human element, psychological element to it. I do wonder what your recommendations are, Mike. We're going to move into our last section here in just a second. But for IT admins, as the remote work personal boundaries are blurring, and not everyone is as diligent as you are in terms of not being tempted to check their personal email from their work computer, what would you say to IT admins?
Sure, and I'll say this, and I know I say this a lot when I have a chance to talk to people, but I just can't emphasize it enough. The role of education in protection, and when it comes to truly getting to the roots of some of those psychological drivers, education is the key to that, because forewarned is forearmed. The more you can explain to people what the potential implications of some of their actions are and what to be cognizant of,
Yeah.
what to be, worried about, what the indicators are that they should be looking for. That really does become your first line of defense.
Yeah. You can't have enough awareness and education about this. Mike, Alex, rather, I want to bring you back in just for a quick second before we move into our holiday cybersecurity safety tips.
Mhm.
Some of the stats that Mike mentioned are staggering in terms of the last 12 months or so with phishing, the rise credentials. How, and you mentioned, Alex, some stats on a lot of great work LastPass Labs has done in just a few months. Give us a little bit more context now that we've had that double click on phishing and some of the things that your customers, consumers, partners can look forward to from LastPass Labs being able to help them really dial the risk down.
Yeah, so I mean, one of the things that we're getting ready to launch here in the near future is what we call our trust center. And our trust center is going to be a central location for everything trust related. So, everything from privacy to, abuse to security disclosure, all of those things. So, um, one of the other things that's going to appear there is we have this alert banner that's going to be at the top. So when somebody receives a phishing email, they can go to they can go to the LastPass Trust Center and they can see if we're aware of it. Historically, probably the past three large phishing attacks we've dealt with, we've had a descriptor and some screenshots so people were aware of it up within an hour of detecting it. So in the
Wow.
future, what you'll see is a path that's very easy for our customers and clients to figure out what we're aware of and what we're looking at. On the plus side there is if it's something new, they'll know it's new and they'll know to submit it,
Yeah.
and we'll be able to act that way. So a big part of labs in general is accessibility to the security team. So if you're a researcher, if you're a customer, if you're another security team, you've got a way to get in touch with us. That's really important. It's something that I was very clear I wanted to happen. So that's where we are.
Outstanding. And that's just what your entire community of consumer users, business users, the partner community, everyone needs. So we're going to definitely, and we're going to link, guys, call to action from this episode is a new blog post on Labs. You can actually get more information. And as Alex was saying, it's a way to really connect with the research team. Let's move now into, Alex, sticking with you, into our final topic. And as here we are at the holidays. I'm in New York City right now, enjoying some holiday shopping myself, but we do so much of our lives is online. What are, from both of your perspectives, Alex, we'll start with you and then Mike, your top 3 recommendations for people to stay safe when they're doing online transactions, shopping for the perfect holiday gift?
Sure, sure. So step one, and this is going to make a lot of sense considering what LastPass does. Use a unique password for all of your logins. We have a tendency as human beings to want to do things that are easy to remember, and we also want to do things like have passwords that are simple because they're easy to remember. So if I have a dog Fluffy 123 might be a password that I use. That is not a great password. And to make it even worse is a lot of people go, man, I don't want to remember all these passwords. I'm going to use Fluffy 123 across 10 different sites, the ones that I go to frequently. The bad part about that is that the bad guys know that they do that as well. So there is an entire industry in the criminal underground where they test logins, right? If they hack one site and they get your username and password for that site, they then can try 20 different other sites to see if they have access to that. So when you think about the potential for you to have a very nasty compromise of your identity based on reusing those passwords, it's absolutely there, and the threat is absolutely absolutely aware of it. So using a password manager like LastPass, which allows you to easily create unique passwords and save them in a way that makes sense and is easy to remember, is kind of the way to go with passwords. So that's number one.
Definitely. Go ahead.
Okay.
Would you add anything else?
Yeah. So I'll let Mike do number 2. We'll do it that way.
Okay, go for it, Mike. Take it away.
Sure. So, I would say go to your trusted sites. That's the sites you usually go to. There's a ton out there where most people do their shopping. Use your usual sites. You'll see, especially on social media, a lot of ads will start to pop up around this time of year. A lot of stores. Some of those are legitimate. A lot of them aren't, and we see that growing as sort of as a scam. So just something to be cognizant of, that you might see some really cool stuff out there on social media. Just be careful of what you're clicking on there.
Definitely. And Alex, is there a third one that you'd say?
Yeah, I mean, so there's actually probably 2 more that I want to talk about. So the next one is patching. So everybody's seen it when they're working on their computer. They get a little pop-up that says, hey, this program has an update. Do you want to install it? And a lot of times it's right in the middle of the workday or right in the middle of you doing something. And you're like, I'll just do that later. And you click, forget or disable or whatever. It's very important that you allow those updates to happen, because typically 9 out of 10 times they're fixing security holes. And if you don't use those patches, there are ways that the bad guys can get into your machine while you're on the internet because you have this vulnerability that's not patched. So one of the things that I tell people all the time is that, when you get those pop-ups, run that patch as soon as you can. Like if you can, afford to run it right now and reboot, do it, because a lot of times, most of the time that is the company is trying to protect you from bad guys doing bad things. So that's one thing. And then the other thing I want to mention is multi-factor authentication. So I talked a little bit about passwords and why they're important and why differentiate and complex passwords are important. Multi-factor authentication is sort of the second level of defense for you. And the way that works, if you're not aware, obviously, is I put in my password and then I get a text message, or I have to use an authentication app on my phone or passwordless token, where we're going to be able to say, yep, that was me, approved, right? So the way that protects you is when a bad guy hacks one of these sites and gets your username and password. If you've got multi-factor set up, he still can't log in with those credentials without you approving it. So multi-factor is kind of a key thing. So, differentiate your passwords, patch your machines, use multi-factor authentication, all through those.
And to Mike's point, use sites that you already know, that you're familiar with, and just really a lot of it's common sense and kind of behavior mechanisms. Guys, thank you so much for joining us on this episode of the Passwordless POV. Really great to understand what LastPass Labs is, the impact, huge impact it's already making, some of the things that are to come that Alex teased us with. Might give us a great overview of phishing, how it's evolving, how we need to be so vigilant and really aware of that, and some great guidelines for those many of us doing online shopping during this holiday season. Mike and Alex, thank you so much for your insights and your time. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, Lisa.
Thank you.